You're listening to the Lou Stokes Podcast. Real and inspiring conversations with individuals from all over the world, sharing their insights on sustainability, fashion, conscious consumerism, and empowerment. Be inspired to take action and be the change you want to see in the world. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Lou Stokes Podcast. Today on this episode, I have the wonderful Rachel Sheila Kann. Thank you, Rachel, for coming on. So Rachel is an ecosystem architect. She is the founder of Circular Earth and the Ecosystem Incubator. So Rachel, thank you so much for your time and coming on to chat to me today. I'm really excited to delve into this conversation with you. So why don't you just give us a little bit of background about yourself before we go into our conversation?
For sure. And thanks for having me on, Lou. It's exciting. And I always love to be on podcasts because I find they're a really great way to kind of interact with people, understand the journeys rather than, a 5-second tiki-toki or whatever it is that's going on, right? So it's really nice to have these really deep conversations. So thank you so much. I'm Rachel Sheila Kann. And I've been in the fashion industry for over 2 decades as a designer and design manager. I moved into sustainability about 7 or 8 years ago, when I suppose it was starting off in a way. There had been things in the past and I'd been really interested in it as well as I was kind of going through my design sort of journey. However, I always thought, well, who am I, to start doing anything in this? I was kind of waiting for the CEOs to sort of say, let's go, let's see that actual, I'm like, there, Luke, flames, things happening. No, nothing happened. Wow. I went into sustainability really at the beginning with curiosity, and I created events that helped bring together what you could do as a consumer, or as I call a citizen right now. So you could buy from eco brands, you could buy from vintage stores, you could swap, you could upcycle, you could learn how to sew. And you can also, be super curious and learn about all of the cool things that are happening within the space. So I did that, and I just met a whole ton of people. And I found that like meeting people and going to other people's events and building up my knowledge over time has been better than doing any PhD, or any course, So I absolutely loved it and continued on the journey. I got asked to lecture. So I lecture at UCA on sustainability and ethics in business, and then went into building my consultancy called Circular Earth. Very much working with brands that want to start up strong in sustainability or create parallel brands. As I was doing that and starting to apply all of the knowledge and the books and everything that I'd read over the years, I really got that a lot of the things that we were doing on these businesses were kind of sitting on top of the economic system and the systems and functions that we had in place. So we built something called the Ecosystem Incubator that starts bringing together people in collaboration and moving away from being separated in business. And this is for the whole system. This is for people who are brands, people who are consultants like myself and yourself, people who are designers, garment techs, right through to people who are growing really cool new stuff from seed in many different places. So right through to CMT units. So we wanted to start to come together as micro functions and micro brands to start creating that future that we could see and the CEOs potentially couldn't.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. Great introduction. And what when it comes to Circular Earth and the consultancy and working with brands, are brands really open now to be more sustainable, or is there still is there a lot of fear around, I don't know what to do, I'm not sure how to do it?
There can be many sort of things that come up as you go along on a journey with them. 2, 3, 4 years ago, I would go around sort of trade shows and meet. I work with very sort of small to medium-sized companies rather than any big guys at the moment. And it was very much like they were like, no one's pushing us to do this, so we don't need to do it now, sort of thing. There's no governmental legislations, and the customers aren't particularly asking for it. But I think the pandemic really switched it. And it went into a new space where people are starting to come to me and ask, okay, maybe they're on the start of their journey, right? But they are curious now and they want to get involved in it in any stage that they can. So, I mean, there will be still some people who are sort of like, might be expensive, it might be time consuming. There's all of these managing the expectations that come up. However, we can start on that journey now a little bit more than we could probably 3 or 4 years ago, right?
Yeah, I guess it's people, like you said, are more open to it because of the pandemic. A lot of people sat and kind of thought a bit about, or quite a lot about who they are and their place on this earth, and what they're doing and how they're using their time and how they're spending their money and things like that. And then again, we just became more aware of a lot of different layers of different issues that are actually occurring. It's like, I feel like the veil was pulled off during the pandemic, and people began to realize, actually, not just in the fashion industry, but in many different industries, that there's a lot going on underneath that you can't actually see. And so I think as well, that's accelerated, like you said, the whole process of, okay, well, maybe there's not so many laws in place, although recently we're seeing a lot more coming, regulations coming into place. But it's like, well, I think people are self-reflecting, whether they be consumers or business owners, brands, and just, questioning about how their actions affect a whole lot more than they could ever imagine. Right.
I agree. Like I think it gave people time to really sit with their own personal values and kind of say, and Ken and I say this in the Real Circularity Journey a lot, is your business in congruence with your personal values? More often than not, it isn't, right? Because we don't all go out going, let's burn the world. We're like, well, let's actually get on with our business and da-da-da-da. We get that, we have to think in pragmatic ways. How can we create a business while also having that journey towards the personal congruence of your values being with the business? We know that we're not going to wave a magic wand and that appears straight away. That's not realistic. However, if we start now, we can be on that journey and be ready when these legislations really hit you as a business, right? And we need to kind of be starting that now, or else, we'll be out of touch big time.
Yeah, absolutely. I always, in a lot of the classes that I teach, I also teach a university or business school rather, and a lot of them say, but no one's saying that we have to do it. They're talking about the brands, and I'm like, yes, but however, I think in 5 years or maybe even less, if you're not on your journey, your sustainable journey, like a real sustainable journey, responsible, whatever we want to call it, then you potentially start to become obsolete as a brand and a business, because consumer behavior is shifting so quickly. And all these regulations are now coming into place that we probably couldn't even imagine 5 years ago. But things are moving so fast.
And things move faster now because we're in the age of AI, right? They're saying, things that took, a year to do will end up taking 3 months, and then so on and so forth, until it'll take 3 days to do something that we could have done in a year. So we have to keep up with that program and be able to not do everything ourselves, because we can come together with consultants and other people to do that, but actually understand, okay, we need to be on that journey and start to have intentions towards it. And once we start the intentions of business, as a person, as a citizen, then we can start to build this, right? Because without intentions, no one's going to pick up the phone and say, hey, Rachel, hey, Lou, let's go. What are we doing now? So
because you can just go along blindly, almost like with blinkers on, that, well, I'm okay right now, but we really need to be looking at the bigger picture, of what's going on.
And I think the bigger picture is important, like, instead of like being in these little silos that we're in, okay, let's go measure CO2 and let's focus on that. actually that's one part of a huge picture that makes up the whole system. So we also definitely need to think about CO2, but we also need to think about the waste that we're creating, the linear paths that we're constantly creating, the water that we're either using up or we're polluting, whatever that is. The social systems that we're in and how that affects everything that we're trying to do in the other silos. But one silo that many people don't think about is the locality. Where is it that we're making stuff? Where is all of the different components coming from? And where is it sold? But then, where is it then redistributed? So, as well as thinking about economics on all of those aspects. So, I mean, I love this part where we're zooming out and really seeing how things interact. Together. Not just in that business, in your business silos, but in your industry, in your business to business, and then your industry to industry part as well. And you can really then see to how things are linking together, how whatever you're doing in the micro on that one product or one piece interacts with all of the other systems and functions. And I think to come into this and to start to having this systems brain is exciting, because that's how we see a real change when we come out of the silos and into the wider picture. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like it's like once you zoom out to zoom in, then that's when the shift can really happen, because you start to see, okay, and then you can break it down and be like, okay, well, I'm going to do this first and then this. And because I think a lot of, not just businesses and brands and things, but even consumers that want to be more sustainable, they kind of become paralyzed at first. They're like, I don't know where to start. Like, how do we do this? And it's like breaking it down to be like, okay, we'll just do this first, this one thing, get that right, and then start moving on to the next.
And get that it's not just an individual journey, right? And the great modern day philosopher called Charles Eisenstein, have you heard of him?
Yes.
He's really interesting, and he does this this one thing that's like a video about, he calls it the maze, but he said people get so overwhelmed because they're like, look, there's massive flames, it's like a huge thing going on, and you've got a tiny fire extinguisher, and you're like, am I just going to go in there and start spraying it around? It's like, well, okay, well, maybe that won't make the biggest difference, but if there's many of us coming together in collaboration with our little tiny things, then we can start to have bigger impact, right? And that's not in terms of an activist conversation. This is actually in terms of how do we create business that comes together in this collaborative way to co-create that change that we need to see. And that's where the incubator was born, right?
Right, no, exactly. And what I find really interesting about the incubators, it's like bringing these different people together that are in the same industry and potentially doing very similar things.
Yeah.
But the fact that, well, instead of like looking at something as competition, it's like, no, hang on a minute. What if we joined forces, like you said, like the fire extinguisher? Like maybe we can do something even better when we do it together. And it's like, I feel like community has become such an important part now more than ever before, because of the pandemic, because we're all shifting and changing as human beings and the way we interact. And I think people realized how much they lacked community. And, a lot of people are feeling like they want to belong to something bigger.
Yeah.
So coming together, and like that's what I loved when I was reading about the incubator, is it's like this, let's all come together and see what happens.
Well, yeah, and strategically saying, do you know what? Actually, it's probably 10 of us that are either all using the same fabrication, and we're all going to go out, 10 of us, different brands, and book MOQs. We're going to do that, and then waste a lot of fabric by doing that. No, why not come together, book MOQs together, and actually get the sustainable material that you want to use, rather than having to have whatever is on the market. And then, there's people who want to create brands, don't always have all of the different skills. Yeah. Why not come together and collaboratively create a brand? And when I started to sit with the kind of things that we could do together, I thought, well, this list actually is infinite. We could come together to do infinite things.
Yeah,
you know, absolutely. It doesn't have to be just those things. It can be everything. And that was what was exciting, you know, that we can come out of this space of it being a competition. It was like, that's my brand and that's your brand, or that you're my supplier. And it's like, well, no, we're partners. We're starting to shape that future in a whole other way. So it's fascinating to see it actually starting, you know. So
no, I can imagine. And it's like, it's more fluid. It's not like there's this rigid thing about this is mine. I'm doing this, oh, you're doing that. It's kind of like we're moving out of this scarcity and competition into this kind of more fluid sharing economy. Even, you know, we're seeing like, you know, people are now, you know, renting clothes, sharing each other's cars, sharing each other's clothes swapping. I mean, I know that's been going on for a while, but it's just becoming more of a trend.
Exactly. So why not share business?
Yeah.
Why not share that risk, share that cost, and share your collective intelligence? I don't profess to know everything about everything. There's really wicked people who are garment techs or know all about what's going on in their regenerative cotton growing in India. I don't know 100% all about that, but Kishore does, and Joe does. And Claudia over there, she really knows about garment tech and how to make that fit. So we can collaboratively make a wonderful product that would be better, you know, as that collaboration, rather than just me going, right, I'm creating this product and you're my supplier. And we can share not only in that journey, but also in the collective benefits of that brand over time. Usually the brand owner would then take, you know, the big margins and big percentages of those things that happen. Okay, but if we're in it together, we can collaboratively share those margins and that future benefit of the brand.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, you know, when we look at sustainability and the triple bottom line, we're looking at the people, planet, and I like to say prosperity more than profit. And I think it's like, actually, when this all comes into equilibrium, that's when we experience not just sustainability, but harmony.
Yeah, beautiful.
And that for me is like, you know, we're looking at all, you know, all the layers there of like the people that are working, let's say in India, they need to be earning a good, fair wage, as well as the person that decides, I don't know, in London, for example, that they want to, you know, produce whatever. So they go and find a factory in India, whatever. So it's like finding this transparency and this fairness and this harmony in all areas. So we have to make money because we need money to live.
Completely.
But at the same time, why aren't we making money in a way that actually is, you know, giving prosperity, not just to the people on the planet, but also our planet, you know, like with all the regenerative. I mean, I don't know so much about the regenerative processes, but I find it fascinating what different people are doing and how they're growing different fabrics out of certain, you know, marshlands and things like that, which again is they're restoring certain pieces of the earth and the soil to then be able to make something that eventually at the end of its life cycle, it's natural, so it's going to biodegrade. And, you know, we won't be having this issue of the landfill. So it's just like, again, looking at the good for all.
Yeah, but the current economy doesn't necessarily support those things, right? This is where I started from, because I was like, I absolutely get creating regenerative systems in our growing, relocating, decentralizing everything. But what we need to do is to create business and regenerative business structures that support that going forward. However, we need to be real that this is the economy that we live in right now. And I need to go and feed my children, you know, and everyone else does, right? So it's not like, let's just chop it off all at one go. We have to be real and go, right, this is the what we're living in. And this is what we can co-create towards that new regenerative system. Yeah. And be real that, we say this a lot in our real circularity journey as well, you know, that that the real emphasis on most of the economy now is on profit. And
Yeah.
it's not an equal bubble. It's not in harmony. Okay, so let's be real about that and work with that in this collaborative way so that we can build towards that future. Yeah. So the people I'm coming together with are doing very interesting and regenerative things and decentralized things.
Mm-hmm.
So one, for instance, is called Contemporary Hempery, and they're growing fields of hemp in the UK and figuring out how they actually make it into fabrication. And there's no systems and functions in that journey from field to fabric, right now. They're creating it. And I support them wholeheartedly, and so does everyone else in the incubator. So it's having that more bigger positioning and branding clout as a collective, and supporting that kind of project, because that isn't going to be cheap, right?
Exactly, that's the thing. It's like a lot of these things are way more costly than it would be to go and manufacture or create a fabric in XYZ place, and it be a fabric that's not environmentally friendly. So I guess a lot of brands, they talk about the cost of things, and it's true. It's like on this economic system that we're living in, it's like it's quite challenging to actually be like, well, because then the consumer is also like, well, why is this t-shirt, for example, 50 euros when I can buy one in, I don't know, Primark for 5? And
Indeed.
there we're looking at the mindset, right? And it's like, for me and my work, I feel like there has to be the shift in consciousness, because how can we possibly be thinking it's okay that a t-shirt really costs 5 euros? Like it like we should all be shocked that that's actually a reality that we're living in. However, consumers, and that's all of us, have got used to clothes being really cheap.
Yeah, because it's a centralized system, right? So, I mean, when I first started in the industry, it was just at the dawning of fast fashion.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, let's pile it high, let's get it at the lowest margin, at the lowest cost possible. And can you shave off a bit on the design? Can you take out pockets? Can you do this? Can you do that? And my design life was constantly doing that, figuring out how I could get it within the cost price so that they could create economies of scale on the top end to be able to figure out those margins over time. And what they did was, actually fabricate a system where if you bought more, you made more and you sold more. And it was this constant churning thing. And we almost now need to move back or transition into the system which was about locality again. Mm-hmm. And that's, again, like you say, allocating value to the people that are creating it, to the ground that it's been created on, understanding that the ground will regenerate if we're growing in a regenerative function, if we've got trees on our land, if we've got animals on our land, and if we're growing crops together, fiber and food, that takes something, but the value that you're placing into that land, as someone who buys into that, say with the hemp guys or whatever, if you buy into that, you're buying into that regeneration. The nutrients that are going into that ground with the trees and the animals that are on there will be way higher than any monocropping. Right. The monocropping just like completely obliterates it, and eventually there won't be any land to be able to do these things on. So there eventually will be a cutoff point where we actually won't be able to do these things. And actually the regenerative way will become the new way, because we can regenerate soil. And I've seen it with many regenerative projects that I've been following or that I've been working on, that can happen even from, a degenerated place. So it's fascinating to see that. And I think over time, these places will become of value again, and we're supporting that part. I support 100% regenerative, decentralized systems as my major thing, over the next 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, hopefully, after my death, I want this to continue, which is why we incubate that future.
Yeah, and I saw that you talk about living systems, and I know that's something in the book that you're about to release at some point. Excited for that. So, living systems to you is all this that you're talking about. So, basically,
not just in the growing of the product or the rearing of the product and that kind of thing, but actually living systems within the way that we do and operate business, the way we create social systems, the way we create politics, the way that we create our industries needs to be thought of as a living system. So we're constantly creating conditions conducive to life. The current system is a degenerative one. Not everyone, even if you're in that system, you've got a job, right? You've not always got that job for life. You're always you have this fear, how I'm going to lose my job, that kind of thing. Actually, a living, breathing system knows that if you're in there, if you're doing your work and if you're breathing with it, you're going to get some benefits, right? So it's creating constant benefits for everyone in the system. And that includes ecology and that includes economy. And it definitely includes the people that are living in it, right? So creating that harmony that you're talking about needs to be thought of in a living systems way. So it's not like woo-woo or anything. It's actually just like, nature knows the best course. She is the best teacher. And this is what we need to place on our systems. So I created the incubator as if it is a forest, that no one tree can be a forest alone, and that these trees are what I call niches of different products and people with amazing skills and attachments to the land can come together and co-create as that living, breathing system that shares those nutrients. And those nutrients could be intelligence, money, connections, waste even, right? So, and we can start to then create this function of sharing, but also knowing that there's things coming in from the outside to actually support that sharing as well.
I know, it's beautiful. I love it. And I love the analogy of the forest. It's so true. How do you, Rachel, envision the future of fashion?
Well, I do envision it as this decentralized system, as a thing that over time moves towards that way, out of kind of intention and indeed necessity over time. I think over time people will be nudged to this way because we won't always have the decentralized systems that we think that we will have. And over time, I think it will become a myriad of maybe the both working in harmony. What we can make and create in the UK and create those systems and functions will be, and then what we can't, we could bring in, right? But we bring in an intentional way and make sure that that's got the right energy and actually that it's actually useful and needed. One of the things that I said when I first built the incubator was, I don't want to build it if no one wants it. If it's not useful and needed, there's no point. Right? And the same thing with everything else. If that's useful and needed, okay, brilliant. Actually, we're creating a living system there. So I do envisage it being a decentralized system that then has this interaction with the other decentralized systems. I also see that it has to be, and economics plays a huge part in this, right? Not just the rebalance and harmony, but the decentralization of economics, so that in the global south that is being regenerated, so that people there have that system. And I think they're doing a really great job in places like Costa Rica, where you can see them taking the donut economics workshop, the donut economics stuff, and actually creating it in their governments. And this is exciting to see that work. And I think the same can happen in industries. We can start to create these ecosystems all over that actually then start to sort of work with each other and create their own economies within each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you feel about a lot of brands, one of the biggest issues is the overproduction.
Yeah.
Do you feel like fast fashion will slow down?
Yeah, it's interesting that, right? You
Mm-hmm.
know, I actually just keep curious about it.
Yeah.
Like for me, I always ask the questions, could fast fashion become regenerative? Is that even possible, right? With the amount of overproduction that we have, right? And I'm thinking actually we could utilize some of the structures that we've done in the micro and see if that works in the macro, right? So instead of us focusing just about the product and about the turn from each product, could we focus also on other aspects that bring rev in? So like education, for instance, right? Could that be a part of how we create revenue? Could educational functions like, the universities that we work in, could they come and understand really what's going on in the ground or what's going on in a business structure or whatever that is, right?
Yeah.
So we can create multifunctional ways of creating money, right? Or creating that flow. Yeah. And that's only one idea. There's loads of other things, membership, the sharing economy, and, so on and so forth. I could talk about it for days, right? But I think there is a possibility to think of businesses in different ways. And the ecosystemic way that I'm talking about with the forest sort of analogy or any other ecosystem analogy could actually be put onto a different business structure, say a large one. Maybe that's not fast fashion. Maybe it's something that's a little bit more thought about and has longevity, or maybe they transform into that. But to work with these self-organizing teams within that structure and actually support that from the bottom up. And, that doesn't mean the bottom, they're the mighty roots, right? But the people that you're working with and create those partnerships and bonds with your supply chain and actually create that innovation with all of these great minds instead of coming from a top-down decision-making sort of thing, right? So, because I know you've probably been in business yourself, right? As a designer or as a garment tech or as anyone that was in there, you were constantly coming to some kind of manager and going, hey, and it would never get to the top always, right? But actually, if we said, right, teams, these are the things that we're looking at, and actually teams speak to each other and figure out what that looks like, instead of it being in silos, we could actually create some really interesting innovation, because there's some brilliant minds out there that are not being listened to because, well, we're playing this little game of musical chairs where only the ruthless and maybe the privileged, get to the top. And right. So let's think about how these great minds could come together in different ways, not just in the micro businesses that we're talking about in the incubator, but within companies. And I've met some people within companies and they have really great intentions. They really want to be in the sustainable futures. But again, it's this constant top-down situation that kind of doesn't aid that.
Yeah,
that's what I mean. Yeah,
absolutely. It's like you reach a brick wall and it's like you can't move any further. It's like the ceiling rather. It gets stuck, and which can be frustrating.
It loses great talent, right? Because that great talent will go, well, there's another company over there. They're kind of doing cool stuff. I'll just go there, shall I? Because. So you're losing great innovators who go and innovate for other people. So why not innovate with your cool people that are in the business? And that's what I want to do with, going forward with the ecosystem work, is to go into companies and sort of say, well, there is another way. We don't have to be in the systems and structures that we're indoctrinated to think that we need to be in. And we can actually make more money by doing so sometimes, right? So
absolutely. And it's like, also, I went into this outlet company in Spain and talked to them about social sustainability. And we really it was basically looking at the store managers and helping them find talent. And they're like, yeah, but in this brand, I'm only allowed to hire slim white women under 35.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was like, well, this has to change. We have to start looking at that person and what qualities and how they can do the job. And they don't necessarily have to have experience, for example, but if they have the qualities, and in the interview you're asking them the right questions to understand if they have those qualities. So like, you have to start shifting your mindset, because everyone has something to offer, and we can't tunnel visions of like, no, they don't tick all these boxes. So we have to start really opening our minds at, how we interview people, what we're asking them, and stop judging and become more like, okay, how can we work? How can that person come into this team and work together, rather than being like, okay, well, this person isn't this or this and doesn't fit into this. And for me, it's such a shift. It's helping people shift out of this like fixed mindset into, yeah, let's grow and let's do it together. Like you said, no competition. Let's collaborate. Let's create something. Let's create this ecosystem where we all thrive.
Absolutely. And I always meet like loads of cool people from different places, and I don't just stay in the fashion industry. Yeah. I go and meet people who are doing things in agriculture and things in architecture or energy. Yeah. I learn loads from my friend who is in energy, because he's been doing it for 15 years and they are far more advanced in what they're doing there. He's already doing like a lot of this collaborative work, mainly in Scandinavian countries, not necessarily in the UK, right? But he sees the value of like putting together all of these different things, not just people, but also projects. Well, these guys have got a wicked project here. Actually, I could click it with these guys and we could create this amazing thing, right? So it doesn't have to be, let's create a big incubator or let's create a big forest. Actually, just seeing the value and potential in different projects and getting away from it being, well, I have to make this project work in its own silo. Okay, we could create a joint venture with that. We could create another person over here or another group of people that could actually make a bigger shift together, right? And I think this is one of the huge distinctions, is to come out of this separation, both in the way that we are individually, in our businesses, even in our industries being so siloed, right?
Yeah.
To then be able to figure out how we make that interact. Yeah. And I've learned so much just by meeting other people that aren't necessarily in my box of fashion sustainability.
Absolutely, yeah. That are in completely different industries. Yeah.
Yeah, completely. And how they're applying, biophilic ideas or regenerative ideas in what they're doing, and how they're building houses, all of this stuff. I know a great guy, Martin Brown, I think his name is. He's amazing, and he's doing a lot of consultancy in how they make houses out of straw bales and all of these different natural materials that have really great insulative properties, and or how they retrofit things, So for me, it's like, I can see that they're fully regenerative, or that they're actually utilizing the waste that we've created already to create something in locality. And the kind of synergies with what we're trying to do, both in regenerative production and also in waste aware, like, okay, how can we mitigate the waste that we have and try and utilize it for longer? Yes, it still has a degenerative path, but using it is better than cooking it in the landfill or even incinerating for power, right? So there's interesting people all over the place.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the more I think about it, it's like it's just going back to basics, back to nature. Like, the earth gives us what we need, but humans, we've just gone and created this linear path, and not really understood that actually if we treat Mother Earth well, then she gives us all that we need. And
exactly. I mean, I think in ancient cultures they had the really great way of looking at it. they'd always, and there's a really great book called, I think it's called Ancient Cultures. I've got it somewhere. I'm such a geek, but, but I love it, and they say that it wouldn't be weird to ask, how is our mountain? How is our stream? How is our ocean? Knowing that the health of the mountain and the stream and the ocean and the land is the health of you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's what we've let go of, this connection to nature, this reconnection. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I got when I went on the regenerative journey, and found the book called Regenerative Leadership by Laura Storm and Giles Hutchins, and started to read about living systems, systems thinking, Theory U, all of these really interesting ideas that created in my mind the ecosystem as it is, that we'd lost that connection, that understanding of that nature not only provides, but we need to have synergy with that. And I was sitting down in lockdown, and that was one of the things that I got. I was kind of like, felt the reconnection with nature very intrinsically, very viscerally inside of me. And this sounds a bit woo-woo, but it was like a real feeling of reconnection. And I didn't go out there and meditate or go or anything like that. I was like actually just sitting there listening to some music in my earphones, eating my dinner. And I looked out onto the communal grounds here, and I could see, the air, the trees, the grass, all of the sort of things out there as an ecology. And then my neighbour's kids came out, and my neighbour, and I could see then the connection socially. And then randomly it started to snow, and the girls put their faces to the sky and started to eat the snow. And in that moment, I really felt, and I can feel it now, this massive emotional reconnection to both people and the earth and how everything is interacted. And I actually screamed out with kind of pain in some ways, knowing that could be broken. And I think if everyone could start to feel that reconnection, we would start to understand how we're being in this world as well, and how our intentions going out there do make a difference.
Absolutely. Beautiful. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Loved it. Thank you for having me.
To finish, you're welcome. Can you tell our listeners where they can find you?
The best website to go on is the rscan.com website that has links to all of my different businesses, the speaking that I do, the books and everything. So that's the best place to go, rscan.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Ciao, Rachel.
Ciao.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please subscribe to the Lou Stokes Podcast. Rate and review in the Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're tuning in from. I'd be so grateful. Also, check out the show notes to learn more about my guests and learn more about me on my website, www.loustokes.com. Until next time, be inspired, take action, and be the change you want to see in the world.